They say that the human race is doomed, that we have lost touch with our true nature, that the media has corrupted us, and that the planet has no future. I disagree. I believe that humanity is full of hope, and that our salvation lies within each one of us.
He's the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is the #1 selling personal finance book of all time, over 30 million copies. And Robert has been there and done that. He started companies, built real estate empires, and taught people how to have a rich mentality. And that's the thing about Robert. He had 2 dads when he was a kid. One was his natural dad, one was his best friend's dad, and one had a poor mentality and one had a rich mentality. A poor person says, "How can I afford that?" The rich person actually goes out and says, "What can I do to make this a great investment?"
I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad because I'm serving a mission to serve my fellow human being. Because the school system will never teach you about money. They teach people to be poor. Poor people say, "I can't afford it, I can't do that, I don't have time," because this is an escape. The reason they're poor is they haven't failed.
It's that fear mentality. You play it safe and you don't introduce new risks into your life.
Every time I failed, it was like, okay, what have I learned? I grow from it. You're fulfilling your true purpose if you commit your life to the highest advantage of others. We got to change what we teach our kids. How can I afford it? How can I do that? A question opens the mind, a statement closes the mind. We have a mission to do.
You introduce a real different mindset.
One of the greatest ways to acquire great wealth is playing Monopoly in real life. So my game financially is business, #1. Second is real estate. And that's why I pay no taxes. My success comes from spirituality, not finance. You do not belong to you. You belong to the universe. What does God want done that I might be able to lend a hand at doing? A lot of people get financial advice from outsiders. If maybe a financial planner, or a stockbroker, or a real estate broker, but they're not on the inside of the deal. And one of the reasons I like being an entrepreneur and being a real estate guy is I'm always trading from the inside. I know the deal. I'm part of the deal. I am the deal, But the average person who buys like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, and saves money, they're outsiders. They have no idea what's going on between them and the real world of inside.
How does a 9-year-old kid in Hawaii, a poor kid, get to this point?
Yeah. Well, I wasn't poor by most people's standards, but I came from a family with a poor attitude, if you know what I mean. Because rich, poor, middle class, poverty starts with a fundamental attitude. So I was in Hawaii, I was 9 years old. My father was the head of education, PhD. Very smart man, good guy. And for some reason, we moved across town and I went to a school with rich kids. So this is a little town called Hilo, Hawaii. It's not on the map anywhere, but it is. I was 9 years old, I moved to this rich kid's school. And suddenly I realized I was poor because it's relative, as Einstein, it's all relative. And my classmates were mostly white guys. And I was one of the few Asians in the class. And these guys, their fathers owned the banks, they owned the plantations, they owned the car dealerships, they owned the meat packing company, they owned the ranches. And I'm going, how come my dad doesn't own that? So I remember raising my hand when I was 9 years old, talking to my 4th grade teacher, and I said, when am I going to learn about money? And she was this woman who should have retired 50 years earlier. She was so sick and tired of kids by this time. She says, the love of money is the root of all evil. And I said, what am I, in Sunday school? I was this punky little 9-year-old kid. And she says, we don't teach money at school. I said, why not? And she couldn't answer me. And she got very flustered. She said, sit down, take your seat. And I got curious. I said, why don't we learn about money? She says, go ask your father. He's my boss. My father was the head of education, PhD, all that stuff. I go home and ask him, I said, why don't we learn about money in school? And he looked at me and says, because the government doesn't let us teach that subject. The government tells us what we can teach and what we can't teach. And I thought that was strange. And I said, but aren't we going to school to learn about money? He says, no, your job is to get a job. I said, but you get a job to earn money. He goes, no, you're supposed to just get a job. I went, no. Isn't the purpose of a job to earn money? He goes, you're correct. I said, so why don't I just learn about money? I can skip the job part, you know? And he got flustered and he said, look, and my father was, for Japanese, very tall, 6'4", and imposing man, good guy. But he says, if you want to learn about money, why don't you ask your best friend's father about money? And I said, why? That's Mike. So I asked him. He says, because Mike's father is an entrepreneur. And I said, what are you? He says, I'm an employee. I'm a government employee. I went, oh, what's the difference? He says, the difference is an entrepreneur must know about money, or they're no longer entrepreneurs. And he says an employee doesn't have to know anything about money, because the government will take care of them, the company will take care of them. So I'm all confused. But I took my dad's advice and I trundled over to Mike's father's office and knocked on his door and I said, hey, I'm here, 9 years old. Teach me about money. He says, beat it, kid, you know. But that's where the story of Rich Dad, Poor Dad started. And finally, through persistence, my rich dad started teaching me about money on one condition. And that condition was he would never pay me. He says, the moment I pay you, you think like an employee. He says, that's the trap. Entrepreneurs work for free. I'm 9 years old, my head's going cracking in half. He says, you never want a paycheck. You understand that, kid? I said, okay, I got it. And he says, well, how do I make money? He says, that's what entrepreneurs figure out. It's like a cat, you know, which comes first, a cat or the cat chasing its tail. And I said, so how do I learn about money? So he would just break out a Monopoly game board. So I would work for free. I'd pick up cigarette butts, and he had hotels and restaurants, and I would clean and do menial tasks. And as I got older, I started getting into office work and marketing and accounting, and I was an apprentice basically, but I always worked for free. And he would teach me about money, but the way he taught me about money was playing Monopoly. And finally one day I got upset. I said, well, when are you going to teach me about money? He says, what do you think we're doing? We're playing Monopoly. He goes, no. What do you think we're doing? We're playing Monopoly. He says, what do you think we're doing? So I don't know. I'm teaching about money. And then that's when, you have one green house. He says, there's many formulas for great success in money. There's thousands of them, but one of the best ones found on the game of Monopoly. Still is today. 4 green houses, 1 red hotel. I said, what? He says, one of the greatest ways to acquire great wealth is playing Monopoly in real life. 4 green houses, 1 red hotel. Well, is that all there is? He goes, that's it. He says, what do you think I'm doing? And I went, I don't know. So then he took me out and he showed me his greenhouses. And 10 years later, when I was 19, I was now in school in New York, and I come back to Hawaii, and Rich Dad had bought the biggest piece of land smack dab in the middle of Waikiki Beach. And when you go to Waikiki Beach today, you'll see the Hyatt Regency Hotel. That was his hotel.
Just like the game of Monopoly.
Just like the game of Monopoly.
Acquired assets and they became bigger assets.
That property wasn't that big at the time, so he had to buy out all the small guys. Because Waikiki was a little dirt water little town. So he'd buy out this shop owner, buy that shop owner. And it took him a while, but he finally assembled this large piece of property. And then he and Hyatt put up this giant hotel. It just sold for $800 million. So that's how I learned about money.